Emoji Poetry Night is a beautiful thing to witness, so thank you all for coming. My name is Courtney Terry. I work at the Public Library here in McMinnville, and we partner every month on the first Thursday at 6 p.m. with Dan and Nancy, owners of the gallery at 10 Oaks, to hold these poetry nights. Before we get started, so this is the second event in a series we're having as part of our Mac Reads programming, and if you haven't heard of it, Mac Reads is our community reading program. We invite everyone in the community to read a book together, and then we talk and think and come to poetry readings kind of around the themes that are in this book. And this year's book is The Distance Between Us by Ariana Grande. There are copies out there. We gave away about 50 books to the community, and then they were instructed to pass it along to their friends. I'm starting to wonder how many people did.
Mine got.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah. So if you see a copy out there, you can ask to borrow it, and they kind of have to because it says right inside to pass it on. And so we have on the 22nd, which is a Sunday, at 2 p.m. we're going to be having a conversation project hosted by someone from the Oregon Humanities. And the conversation will be about immigrants, refugees, specifically in Oregon, and kind of how a community conversation about that. That'll start at 2 o'clock.
In the library?
At the library, yes. And then Ariana Grande will be here on Thursday, April 26th. She'll be here she'll be here for kind of a more informal conversation at the Linfield Nicholson Library at 3. And then she will be having kind of a more formal lecture in the ICE Auditorium just over there.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks. I think that's most of the boring technical stuff I have to talk about. Sorry, not that local community media is boring. Sorry.
Good save. Good save.
Sorry. So, and I will introduce Jose, who most of you have met before, but he'll be reading from his your new book doesn't come out till...
There's a variety.
Oh.
There's this whole thing.
I'm really excited, so I'll just stop talking. Jose, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jose ARAGUZ. Because it's bilingual poetry night, I thought I would do something kind of interesting for me. I'm going to read to you from 3 of my books, a couple of poems from each, and kind of talk about what the place of Spanish and English have in my writing career. I write primarily in English, but the way I put it is there are stories I can't tell without rolling my R's, and that's really what I've been engaging with for the past 20 years in my writing. So I'm going to read from the 3 books, and then at the end I'm going to read from a new manuscript, which is poems only in Spanish. Like, it's taken me a long time to get there, but I'm working on it. So I'll read those poems as well at the end. But to start off, my first book is Everything We Think We Hear, and the poem I want to start off with, this book is all these quirky little prose poems, because for me, a prose poem means it's a paragraph, and people know what to do with a paragraph. If you see a poem and it's all over the place, like cut up in lines, you're like, oh, what is that? But then if you get a paragraph, it's like, oh, I know what to do with that, kind of. But this is from the first book, and the title of this one, it's very short. My History with the Spanish Language. Something is offered up when we speak, and something is fed. Mi familia es mi historia. So it is when I speak with family now. I take the time and say each word of how I may come across a child making communion with all he knows. So that line in Spanish there is, mi familia es mi historia. And one of the fun things that I find engaging between Spanish and English, the line translates, my family is my history, but also my family is my story. And so preparing for this reading, coming across that line, I'm like, oh, that's prophetic. Unintentionally prophetic, but I'm like, okay. This next poem is called Drinking at Home. Tonight, bent in bottle gleam, I see the man I am. My mother's brown eyes test me. Those no tuve nada eyes. Those yo te di todo eyes. I drink her beer. She offered, and I told her no. She said to be polite, and polite becomes an arrow I know will ride the air most of the night, because conversations when we drink go everywhere. She asks, and I say it is okay to drink as an escape. I don't tell her that to escape is to make it so you don't come back. We take turns not coming back. Each pull bends our faces. The mother of dresses with flowers stitched down the front, garden of a mother on her way to work, becomes the anchor of a mother who fell to bed long after I had gone to sleep those nights, where I was small enough to share a bed and float close to her shore. Another pull, and again I am the child pretending to be asleep, holding a sheet over my head as my mother argues on the phone with a man. These waters move the moon between us. Instead of writing about her, I want to buy her a mansion, a car, a high school education. But I am always broke, educated enough to know the debts I owe. I eat her food, stretch what cash she sneaks into my hand like afternoon shadows, and hope one job will call, one word will spark God to whisper into my ear how to make these words mansions enough. Until then, the arrow hits, and the waters fall from our brown eyes again, as if to fill these bottles. So, this book, it's very much about young Jose, like Jose in his 20s, me, and a lot of drinking in these poems. Sometimes with mom, and it gets heavy, and sometimes just, being young. And I say that to kind of lead to the next poem, which is called, about a phone conversation I had with my mom when I was at a fellowship for poets from across the nation, and I was the only Mexican there, and I've been used to being the only Mexican American in a creative writing workshop, and it gets odd, but so this is still young me who doesn't call home enough. And as you notice, I'll slip in Spanish sometimes, and sometimes I'll translate within the poem, and sometimes I won't. The two things I want to translate for you on this is the first line. This is something my mom says. Me dejaste con el corazón en la mano. You left me with my heart in my hands. My mom is very much a telenovela, very much soap opera, very dramatic, but she's my heart. How could I not be a poet with someone saying these kinds of things just randomly? The other phrase to pay attention to is ¿qué piensas?, which is a question. What are you thinking? And it's something my mom would say to me on long drives. And it was one of the few times as a kid where I felt like she wasn't being mom, she was being like adult to fellow human. And I'm just like, oh, I need to find an answer to that. ¿Qué piensas? This is Colorado. Me dejaste con el corazón en la mano. I hadn't heard my mother's voice in half a year. I wanted to say I forgot or lost track of something, but that would have been too honest. I said instead that I had been busy, been good, been behaved, all of it in my best Spanish, which was in so many ways not saying much. With heart in hand, she began to tell me about my brothers, her graying hair, the silence her man needed in a small house. No te levanta la mano, ¿verdad? I asked, knowing that I could never trust the answer. Cuidado con el descansito, she said, instead, then went on about how I am late with giving her grandchildren. ¿Qué haces? I told her, I write poetry. My pages are my children. Ni nada. Whatever. She then told me how a co-worker told her that I could write a book which could become a movie. Then I'll have money. ¿Qué piensas? This was my favorite question. I remember it from long drives at night, how she would say it as if she herself was tired of thinking. At that moment, I had been thinking about how there were too many men in our family who take money, but how I always end up asking for some anyway. Instead, I told her, I'm the only Mexican writer in the workshop. El único mexicano? I told her, yeah, I'm rare. Raro. Raro tu nariz. "Rare your nose." And I laughed, and she laughed. And it went on that way, question and answer and advice, question and answer and silence. And it would go on that way no matter how many sounds I threw out, looking for the right one. We would always be like birds, making as much of a home as we could out of broken things. So, Small Fires is my second book, and in this book, if there's a theme, the theme is kind of violence and kind of like physical violence, both child abuse as a kid, but also kind of domestic violence, watching my mom go through relationships, and also emotional abuse. There's poems in here about my divorce. That, I won't be reading those, but it's in there. It's all messy. You know? I mention that because I think the two poems in here kind of deal with both sides, the physical abuse and emotional abuse. How many of you know the word casar, the Spanish word casar? We got one. So, what's that? Homemade. It is not. You're right, you're here in casa. So, yeah. So, it has two meanings, it has two spellings. Part of my journey as a writer has been kind of navigating these two languages. I only spoke Spanish at home. I never read it, I never wrote it. And so my mom would say all my life, like, oh, one day, me voy a casar, I will get married. So one version is casar, get married. And this poem deals with when I first read the word on the page, and I thought I knew what it meant. I'm like, oh, that means to marry. But then there's a difference between C-A-S-A-R and C-A-Z-A-R. So one means marry, and then the one with the Z means to hunt. So keep that in mind. This is casar means to hunt, not to marry. I thought it was a love story, a wedding taking place in the book of fables, the first one in Spanish given to me because I was always reading. Por eso ojos de vaca. That's why your eyes look like cow's eyes, one act would say. Never alone, but so alone as I could get. I tried to follow the cazador, the hunter, going after the fox, but was stopped by the fox falling on her side, turning back into a woman. The wailing man, the cazador, also stopped to hold her in his arms. The ceremony made no sense. I tucked the book away with my toys under the sink, and let the story sit there in the dark, rooted with the things I'd learned to leave behind. Like a root, the story spread in offshoots down into my life. Casar, my mother would say, after hours talking in a parked car with a man whose face I would never see because the porch light was kept off. Casar, she'd say to me, as I grew up and moved from place to place, asking if I loved my books, as if I thought they'd care for me as I grew old. Casar, I later read in another book, another fable, and saw for the first time that the word I heard so often from my mother was cousin to this other word, that each sounded the same, to hunt, to marry. How many pages had I turned, and in my own confusion read violence as love, had read one word and let the meaning shoot right past me, an arrow cast for its own sake without caring where it hit? How long will the chase after a woman feel like the chase away from myself? Will this forever be the story? Where is the book I can pull out to go back to where I started? A man fumbling his way to a clearing, a fox stopping, holding still, silently scanning the sky for something that is yet to fall. So for this next poem, the image you need in your head is the living statues. You all know what the living statues are? They're these street performers. I saw them first in New Orleans, but I've seen them in other big cities. They're all either in gold. The guy in this one is in gold, but sometimes it's silver. And they just kind of hold still in public places and have a hat in front of them where people, leave tips and things. And so that image, for me, opened up a couple of different moments in my life. So if you have this image of this person holding perfectly still, and then a version of me not knowing how to do that, but thinking things. This is called Performer. On Chartres Street, I admire the living statues. At every word called out to them, I check the lines of their faces to see if they have changed. This one in gold is good, is most like stone and seems to never hear what's being said. His glow is like the glow I had around me in another life. Instead of a street, a fire on a ranch. Instead of camera flash, a flash command. Habla inglés, speak English. This was after midnight, when the adults had drunk enough and started singing. The other kids would push me and a girl close to the fire and tease, habla inglés, speak English, ella quiere, she wants you to. Shoulder to shoulder with her. I must have known her name, but that word was not important then. That word held still so others could be summoned. I couldn't see her face. Laughter broke as the crowd called out, di novia, di amor, di boda y flores. Say girlfriend, say love, say weddings and flowers. Their laughter was the sound of expectation, a sound like the coursing of a fountain, which is a sound of water made to move and fall over itself. A sound I heard again when older and alone with another girl who had just finished asking for me to speak in Spanish. Say something beautiful, she asked. Her name, how we met, her love of being in the room as I spoke to my family. All of it fell as I focused on the glow of the candle I had lit for her. Having learned how to set the mood from watching movies, where this kind of thing would never stop the hero. A hero who would have done more than just sit there silent, my face unmoving. I had hardened it to stone. Waited until she walked away, as the crowds around me here walk away, but didn't know what would happen after, how stone comes back to life. I never learned to collect my heart like the hat left at the feet of this man, so good at playing stone, laid out for anyone to drop what they can spare. Thank you. So this is my third book. It's recently came out in February. It's called Until We Are Level Again. And if I'm going through like mythology of family, this one kind of pauses the most of the three and starts to elegize my father. My mom had him when she was 14 and ran away from my dad when I was 2. And then he died when I was 6, and he died in jail in Mexico. So there's a whole bunch of absence in details that I have. I can count on one hand the things I know for sure about him. Like I know when he died. I know when my mom left him and why, because she holds a grudge still. But this book kind of goes into that heavy doodling. Yeah, let's say that. But I wanted to read 2 poems from here that also engage with this kind of the way I engage with English and Spanish on the page. This first one is called Last Rites. Were I 10 years old again, I would have no problem drawing from memory the words that made my mother's house feel bigger in the dark. The bedroom window wider, the night quieter in its audience. My tongue passing over Spanish it has since mistrusted. Then I would have cared more to say what was expected, would not have paused at Padre nuestro que estás en el cielo, our Father who art in heaven. My hand would not have trembled as it followed through with the sign of the cross, a motion I now repeat shakily over a dead bird on the sidewalk. I hurry and hope no one sees me, already in another silence, describing the bird's still head as the thumb on the hand of the dead, drawing from memory the words, my tongue passing over Padre nuestro, a motion I now repeat shakily. And this other poem from this book that I'm going to read, I borrow a line from a poet named Pedro Miguel Obligado. So there's a really good line of poetry in here, and it's his. And it's in Spanish, and it's Mi vida es una rama que a tu paso deshojas. Translates to, my life is a branch that, at your step, unleaves. Or, my life is a branch that, when you walk by, loses all its leaves. Like it's a tough, it's a tough thing to like translate because it's one word in Spanish, this hojas. Like it unleaves. If I had to translate it, I would probably battle between unleaves in English, kind of like, well, Microsoft Word would squiggle it in red and be like, that's not a real word. But we're poets and we're used to this. Or I would have to be, well, it scatters its leaves. But that's the line that I borrow. And this is speaking Spanish on the streets of New York City. I want to believe they are not speaking Spanish, this mother and son, so much like the mother and son in photographs back in Texas. But they are. I want to believe the boy has lost no father. The mother never had to explain being broke, nor how bodies break. That they speak only sunlight, speak held hands, speak city traffic, speak flags of many countries. I want to believe they are not filled with the same words in which I lost my father. Words my mother cried through later, explaining about a man she left and how she'd never leave me. The same words shuffled out as I explained I had to leave. Words moving the air between us, words holding over the miles, words letting through all we mean to each other. I want to believe, but know they speak in the same words I have to keep to myself. Words mumbled in the park, taking the shape of, mi vida es una rama que a tu paso deshojas. I know the words they speak, but not what the words mean between the stranger I am now and this mother and son. So, as I said, I'm going to read 3 more poems from a new manuscript all in Spanish. How many of y'all know Spanish? I'm curious. All right. No, this is a scary thing for me. I've never read these in public before. There's that. And yeah, I'm wondering if it's going to be hard not to like translate for y'all. But this one, I'll translate the titles for y'all. But the first one is called Oda a un tatuaje, which is Ode to a Tattoo. Las iniciales de mi padre, hinchadas en negro, como me dijeron que tenía mi nombre en su piel, es una reclamación. Esta sangre mezclada con tinta, este pinchazo de piel cortada, esta pierna ardiendo, estas letras que brillan como el mundo bajo una costra, esta semejanza, este muchacho ahora un hombre, este nombre hecho cicatriz. Todo esto me asegura que algún día nos reconoceremos. So that, I'm curious, like, should I'm having a tough time. I was talking to Annie, my wife, about like, it's going to be hard not to translate in the moment. So
Now what you should do is just read it really loud for those of us who don't speak Spanish.
just really loud. I'm going to read it again so you understand it, right? No, I'm just going to read it. For those of y'all who can catch some of it, and if some of y'all don't, just hearing it. That's cool. But also, like, for me, because just my general attitude towards poetry is like, every poem is a gift. Every poem is a gift that you find, and it's something that you work at so that it's a gift for someone else to find and get something out of. And that road to that is very interesting. And so with that attitude, it's hard for me to be like, well, here's a gift. You might not know what to do with it. So like, this is kind of like if somebody for Christmas got you a rolling pin, and you're like, oh, thanks. That's unexpected. Okay. So 2 more poems. This is called Olvidado, which translates to forgotten. Only translating the titles. Espero que la juventud sea perdonada. Espero que lo que hago sin saber y lo que pierdo sin querer pase como el mar que se ama y reocupa piedras y basura. Pedazos. Esta vida se deshace en cada momento que nace y muere. No hay manos suficientes para recogerlo todo. Pero está bien, porque la página, como la memoria, a veces piensa que es un espejo. Espero que me encuentres aquí, sin recordarme, joven, en un nuevo momento a tu lado. So, yeah, these are from a manuscript of poems all in Spanish, and like, it's the strangest book I've been working on, I think. I've got a memoir that's all in like weird poems and prose poems and all that, and that's a weird book structurally, but I feel like this is my weirdest book, only because it's the first time I'm writing a book where I don't have a theme other than quirkiness. And like those first two poems I read, they were kind of heavy, but this next one is in a series in the manuscript I'm working on, of what I call practical translations. So like, if you're bilingual, you walk around and you see signs that are bilingual, and sometimes you wonder about the translation. And so you see, thank you for not smoking, and it's like, por favor de no fumar algo aquí, or like, which translates like, thank you for not smoking something here. I think I saw that once. I do that, I do exit only, and there's another one in the series. But this is, so I was like, well, let me do what poets do, which is kind of get punk rock and run with ideas. And this is my practical translation of the phrase, thank you for not smoking. Gracias por no, excuse me. Gracias por no esconder el sol detrás de mensajes de oscuridad y ceniza. Gracias por no ser ceniza. Gracias por ser más tranquilo, más quieto, más en tu lugar que el niño agreste que es la lumbre. Por tener humildad, por no estar avergonzado en no tener nada que ver con el fuego, ni con lo que te torna calor y luz. Gracias por aceptar tu posición en el universo, por saber que si uno no brilla, no significa necesariamente que le falta luz. Gracias por controlarte, por no ser tan hambriento que te comes tu propio cuerpo, con un hambre tan fuerte que todo lo que deja atrás es una bandera más gris que blanco, y que significa la entrega a la mala salud o peor, piel fea. Gracias por no molestar la boca con un cigarrillo como palabra huevona o indecisa. Por no pasar por la nariz como el áspero aliento de una persona enojada. Por no tener más confianza en los brazos que en las gracias. Thank you. Especially with that last one, there's a comedian named Eddie Izzard who does a whole bit in French, and then in the middle of it, he's like, for those of you who don't know French, what I just said is really freaking funny. So what I just said is really hilarious. You gotta trust me on that. Thank you. I'm happy to do a quick Q&A if y'all are interested, or if y'all have any questions about what I read or want to hear more. If not, we can just run to the open mic too. So.
What do you do for a living?
What do I do for a living? Right now, I've got the best job right now. I am a professor of creative writing and English over at LINFIELD.
Oh, okay.
I just started. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I just started. But the road to the office over there has been a long one, and it's been coffee shops, bookstores, construction, food service. So it's been, yeah. I have an office. It's strange. I have an office, and there's ventilation. Like when you're working construction, there's no, yeah. So.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Cool. Well,
Why the decision to write something solely in Spanish?
because I found myself writing them. That's mainly it. I would, see, I'm an introvert. I like to say that I'm an introvert everywhere except the classroom or performing on stage. Like, you can't be an introvert in those spaces. You'll lose students if you get too shy. You lose an audience if you get too shy. But the way I'm an introvert on the page is, well, I started reading Spanish for the first time in high school, and again, like I shared earlier, I speak Spanish fluently. Like my conversations with my family are now all in Spanish. But the first time I read a poem in Spanish was at a Barnes & Noble, and it was a Pablo Neruda poem, who's a Chilean poet. Just one of the 5 big names you'll see at the Barnes & Noble. And I had to have the Spanish and English translation, because I was like, oh, well, this is in Spanish. I know Spanish, I got this. I sat down, I'm like, ooh, I don't know this. This is literary Spanish. These are metaphors, and I had to look up words in both languages, because sometimes, and that's the thing, I was like, oh, it would be simple enough to just have the pacing translation, but then I'd read the translation, and I want to argue, I'm like, that's not. This hojas isn't scatter like leaves, it's gotta be unleaved, like we gotta, so having that kind of experience in high school and kind of living with that, always seeking out a book or two a year to like read in Spanish, and then over time just I'd be like, okay, well, let me try writing haiku in Spanish. I can't mess that up, right? You know, so I would try to write little haikus in Spanish, and that slowly evolved into, we're talking over 20 years, getting to this manuscript that's now going to be all these poems in Spanish. So, and it's something that, it's scary. It's scary because I'm like, I don't, especially at this point in my writing career, like I have an audience who knows my work, but they might not all know Spanish. So, you know, that's something to consider. So, I'm happy right now because it's fruitful. It's in the working stages right now. So, yeah. But no, thank you for asking.
Do you find that there are some topics that you just feel it's easier to express in one language or another?
Oh, cussing, I think. Cussing is a lot more fun in Spanish. But it's also, you know, it's funny. A couple of the poems in the manuscript were originally in English, and I self-translate over into Spanish. And they just feel a little more like at home, I guess, in the language. The Ode to a Tattoo was originally in English. And just getting into the word cicatriz versus scar, I was just like, well, that's more of that. And then the momentum of the words in Spanish felt more natural. So I get to have that kind of conversation in my writing too, where it's like, okay, well, I have this option, but everything has to have a purpose. Like, it's something I tell my students. They're like, oh, poetry can be anything. I'm like, yes, asterisk. You gotta be ready to defend your anything, and you have to, you're anything, you have to learn the rules of your anything. And so that really, English and Spanish, is me learning, me working with English and Spanish in my poetry is me learning the rules of my anything, and that kind of thing, so. Thank you all.
So I was,
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was curious if, you know, because they can't see it. So when you do, in your English books, when you use the Spanish phrase, translate that, or you just leave it and let us Google it?
I think the short answer to that, I let people Google it.
Yeah.
I want to say about 75% of the time, my writer mind will just naturally want to translate it within the text. There's a poem in another manuscript that I found where I talk about my mom saying adelante, and her name is Adela. And the word adelante is like, hey, that's what she says when I'm down. She's like, no, we just got to keep moving forward, adelante. And I'm just like, well, your name's in there, Mom. Do you know this? She's like, yeah, but are you listening to me? And that's kind of, I mean, she's a poet, and she just isn't aware of it, of the influence she has on me. But that moment in the poem, I make sure to be like, she says adelante, her name and the word moving forward. So I always try to do something like that as a kind of gesture to the reader that like, hey, in case you don't know what this word is, here is kind of a definition. But I never do it where it's clunky. I never feel like, oh, I need to do this for this reason. I'm like, this language will lend itself to something in English that I'm struggling with myself as someone who knows two languages. So.
Yeah, the reason I asked, I'm a 6th and 7th grade language arts teacher,
Oh, okay.
so the writing is clunky anyway. But they're getting there, and I had a girl, you know, throw in a Spanish phrase today, and it was important to her story. I'm wrestling. Do I say, hey, translate that? Because it was stay in the car. She got out of the car, went to the playground, and she, you know, her mom said this in Spanish. And I don't have an answer. I think it's still.
Oh yeah, what I would say, and something I do, like even in the poem Raro, the one about me and my mom talking about me being the only Mexican writer in the workshop, there were a couple phrases in there I didn't translate. One of them is cuidado con el descansito. That's in this. That's my mom. One thing my mom says in that poem, and it translates to be careful with the little rest, which is she's saying, hey, be careful while you sleep around, is what she's alluding to. And even right now, translate, I'm like, there's no slick way of doing that. And also, like, I don't translate that when I'm talking to my mom. Right. So I think about that decision. The 25% of the time I don't translate within the text, it's because translation wouldn't come into play. So maybe you can have that moment, that kind of conversation with your student where it's like, well, can it only be said that way? Because I suppose we gotta get to that moment and make that decision.
Right.
Okay, you know what? Some people will catch it, some people won't. They can always ask. Make sure tell her she can hold a Q&A after she reads it to somebody.
Okay.
Answer any question. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask a little more about your personal life. Your mom, you keep alluding to her, and so, she sounds like she had quite an influence. You had mentioned your dad died at a young age, and then, did you have a very stable, upbringing, and, I mean, how did you arrive at your point?
How did I arrive at my point? Like, just keep going, pure determination. But introverted determination, you know, I didn't, well, my mom was the model for survival, for sure. She was a waitress most of my life until I was 17. 17 is when I went to college, which to her, 17 is when I ran away from home. And she still refers to it that way. I'm like, Mom, I left. You knew where I was going, like, you had an address. But as soon as I got into college, that was the first dramatic shift out of like not being in South Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas specifically, around a predominantly Hispanic community. And so finding myself not just away from home, away from family, but also away from culture, just put me in a whole nother conversation with myself and my thoughts and my identity. Corpus Christi, Texas was really a little bit about it. One of the things it gave me a lot of good things, but also gave me a lot of self-hatred. Like, there was my mom would say, hey, don't go, when you're at school, don't speak in Spanish. They're gonna know. And I'm like, Mom, look at my skin, they're gonna know. Also, like, what are they gonna know? But that's just, I mean, her struggles taught her to be very protective. And so I had to both survive with that and then learn how to translate that within the world of college, the creative writing world, which, yeah, is slowly changing, slowly gaining in diversity. But going through my degrees, like, yeah, it was very isolating. I would turn in poems with some Spanish in it, like, oh, that's not appropriate. And then at the same time, the same professor's like, oh, you know, here's a poem that has Latin in it, or a French word. I'm like, really? What are you saying there? I'm not gonna tell you what you're saying there, but what are you saying there? So that's been kind of the intellectual journey. But the surviving has been getting a degree and then realizing, oh, I can't do much with this. I gotta go pay the bills. So teach on the side and work whatever minimum wage job I can, and then go get the next one. And but never giving up on the writing, for sure. There were times in my life where I'd have to be at work at 6, so I wake up at 4:30, so I have that extra half hour to just write and or maybe just read a poem and really invest myself. Because then I gotta go somewhere, I gotta commute, gotta put on a name tag, an apron, and I gotta go be someone else. But always keep making sure I had even 30 or even 10 minutes of like who I was on the page. That's how I survived, really.
Awesome.
No, thank you for asking. All right, thank you all. This has been a lot of fun. I'm very excited to hear your poem. So.
It's also interesting because you can kind of space out and not try and translate and try and understand. And so for someone who doesn't speak any Spanish at all, there's a lot of value in listening to someone else speak a language you don't understand. Even, you know, whatever language it may be, the idea of listening to somebody and having no idea, but still kind of listening to the way that they're speaking, you may not understand the word, but you can still find meaning in it. And so,
Lovely. You just made a wonderful point. Thank you.
that being said, do we have more readers that would like to share? Awesome.
Hi, I'm Donovan. I'm a senior over at LINFIELD, creative writing major. I write a lot of poetry. So this is one that I'm still working on, still kind of in a draft form. It's called The Truth About Apples. Teeth peel away crisp flesh, crimson and curled on the swollen tongue, stuck in the gums like a bad song. I used to eat apples whole. Now a blushing cheek sliced and fanned on a fried egg sandwich, sweet and tender over brown white bread. I don't know how else to live. A poor man's fruit, no need for the soft squeeze and humble harumph. We know it's right. One of the few joys in life I know to be true. After his night shift at the hospital, my father used to bring home Red Delicious in a brown paper bag, bigger than a man's fist, redder than dawn on a Florida beach. Slice by slice, pink lady scooped in a peanut butter jar. My wife tells me to buy the pinkest ones because they're the sweetest. But it turns out those are some of the tartest apples you can buy. Even our mouths are talented liars. Cafeteria apples, hard and dry as summer, or wet as a creek, only half ripe. I still pick one from the basket at lunch counter's edge, poised like an afterthought. Buckets worth of golden delicious, ground apples, but don't get excited. They're bruised, swarming with yellow jackets and deer teeth marks, thin, washed out skin. The trees were planted when Kennedy was president, like a tribute to optimism. My daughter stuffs her cheeks, grins with her mouth full of peeled slices, any flavor, always crunchy and wet. She howls when it's gone, scolds her little stuffed cat.
Thanks, Dad. Who else would like to share? Oh God!
Go ahead.
There was like absolute silence for 5 seconds, and then 3 people on lunch were like, "Oh, all right, okay." You win, Bruce.
I gotta warm up my phone.
It's like Battle of the Clones.
So this is called, I was inspired by the theme tonight. And, thinking about it for the past couple of weeks, I thought, it'd be great if I did something that wasn't just in English, but I stumbled around too much and I couldn't bring that. So you're getting the watered down version that's all in English, with a few little sprinkles that are probably about 50-50 grammatically correct and just fun. So, lighthearted title, Global Gab. Seeking amusement at home one night, I glanced at our faded old globe perched on the shelf, looking old as myself, while I sat in my slippers and robe. It was easy to imagine flying overseas, passport and tickets in hand, tasting cheeses and wines, viewing temples and shrines, listening to the lingo of the land. I dare say, old chum, now see here, by Jove, don't chill our warm ale or drive the wrong side of the road. Sacre bleu, qu'est-ce que c'est? Who homogenized le stinky cheese and carbonated le Beaujolais? Ay caramba, orale, flesh of the gods in a Hershey's kiss. Masa harina making Frito-Lay? Gotta spin the globe. Das vidanya, comrade. Sit, drink vodka with me. Maybe this glasnost spells end of KGB. G'day, mate. Down under, kangaroos drink beer from a can. Why do you brand the Outback a soccer mom sedan? Hey, paisano, mamma mia, my little bambino's no can of drink of wine in Americana pizzeria. Oy vey, Meshuggah, don't fiddle on my roof. Chicken soup will cleanse the soul, but you still need further proof. The teachings of yoga have come forth from Calcutta to help your body move like it's melted butter, to feel very, very good, burn sandalwood, and meditate away mental clutter. Hey Rasta, listen real good, man. Reggae rhythm runs through our island souls. Our medicine women sew up these dolls. So watch out. Maybe they tie chickens on your nearby pole. In the land of the rising sun, alongside a bamboo brush, ink stained the paper, buried treasure in our thoughts, drawing happiness. As this adventure wound itself down, I shuffled off to bed, letting echoes from the journey weave a tapestry in my head.
I'm Dave. I'm a teacher over here at Dunaway, and thought about what I was going to do. I'm going to put this one away and just do a spoken word piece. So this is about a class that I had about 3-4 years ago. Hey you! I see you there. I see you there wishing I'd let you pull up your hood and hide your face. But I see you. I see you there behind the bravado, pants sagging low, leaning like a cholo, bopping to the beat, running on the street. Because you're too scared to walk. And here, maybe you can fool some of the people some of the time. But you can't fool me. Because I see you. And I see you there trying to melt into your seat, wishing you could find a shirt the same institutional mauve as the furniture, because if you could, then maybe you could become invisible. And if you could blend into the walls, maybe no one would hurt you. But I see you. I see you there, and your blouse is cut too low and your shorts are cut too high and the top of the bottom doesn't reach the bottom of the top, and you are advertising more than you are willing to sell. Not now, not yet. Not for a bit of attention that will prove to you you are not the worthless child they tell you you are at home. And I look into your eyes and I see you. I see you there, and you don't read or write so well, but you can speak Spanish better than I can ever hope to, and I will always honor your culture and wish my mama could make mole like yours. I see you. I see you there, and I remember what it's like to not fit in and not having someone to call my friend and wanting so bad to be cool. But instead finding that I was growing so fast and tripping over my own too large shoes and wearing hand-me-down clothes because we couldn't afford this year's styles. I see you. I see you there, and no, I will not cut you some slack. I will push and ride you and make your life miserable because I believe that you are too young to fail and I care too damn much to let you. So no, I will not get off your back. And yes, you do have to read and write all that. And no, I will not give up on you. Because I see you now, child, and you are wonderful.
Well, my name's Mike Paul, and I write a little bit of poetry here and there, so I thought I'd lighten the mood up a little bit. There's been some really awesome, I mean, your eloquent speaking is really great. I didn't understand some of it, but it sounded really
Which parts? No.
About half, but anyway, it was great. So anyway, my poem for the night here is, any veterans in here? All right, so maybe you'll probably catch on to this a little bit anyway. It's a kind of a whimsical poem about my time in the service. I was in the Navy. Okay, this is called The Chief. I once was a squid in Uncle Sam's crew. I didn't know the difference between a spanner and a screw. I wanted to serve my country like Honest Abe Lincoln, but Uncle said, keep mopping, son, I'll do all the thinking. In my ass I had a pain, and he was called the Chief. My freedoms he just took away, not unlike a thief. He said, don't fret, son, I know what I'm doing. Just then the pain returned because he returned to chewing. But through the years I learned a thing or two, like what the difference was between a spanner and a screw, and stuff like don't get sucked into the intake of a jet. But the one thing I learned too late, I really did regret. Admirals, high and mighty control the ships and docks. Commanders issue all the tasks while you're on their clock. Lieutenants need saluted, sure, but then there is the chief. The others give out the orders while he gives out the grief. So, that's my comment.
Thank you. Do we have others who would like to share? I have like, and I think I say this every time, which makes it a little more awkward, but I have like a certain amount of time that I will accept the awkward silence before I'm like, okay. Just in case. Okay. Great. Thank you all for coming tonight. So there's next month we are not having poetry night. The first Thursday of next month is the awards. I've been frequently talking about a writing contest called Paper Gardens, which is run by the Arts Alliance of Yamhill County. And so the first Thursday of next month, which is May something. Third. Oh, that's my grandma's birthday. I definitely know that. Oh God, I hope she doesn't watch MCM 11. May 3rd at the Chehalem Cultural Center in Newburgh, they will be having an award ceremony, and all the winners of the poetry competition and prose writing will be reading their work. And there's kids, and for some of them it's their very first public performance of their poetry, so it's a really cool thing to go and see, and so I hope you will all go. And then we will be back here on the first Thursday in June.
7th.
The 7th. That's nobody's birthday, don't worry. For another poetry reading and open mic. So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Jose, for reading, and all of our readers. It was great. We'll see you soon.